Before Assassin's Creed Valhalla was even revealed, I set out to replay the entire series last year. I fell a little short on my goal, but one game stood out above the rest. After replaying 7 AC games, it was clear to me. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is my favorite of them all. Hey guys, jayvee here, and today I'm sharing my 2021 review of Black Flag. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more videos just like this. This video is sponsored by Opera GX, the world's first browser built for gamers. It's tailored specifically for the gaming community. Opera GX is especially useful for PC gamers because of GX Control, which maximizes game performance while the browser is running. You can keep multiple tabs open, play music, or watch my videos while you're playing. Opera GX has limiters to control the hit on your CPU and RAM, maximizing frames and performance. It even has a network limiter, which reduces network lag in streams and multiplayer games. I tested these myself and found Chrome is just a resource hog. Opera GX solves so many problems for me. Speaking of, one of the most useful features is GX Corner, which basically does my job for me. It keeps me up to date on new and upcoming games divided by platform, and it highlights deals handpicked by Opera GX, so I can save some money too. I used to open like a dozen tabs in Chrome to track stuff like this, but Opera GX puts everything in one place. Opera GX's coolest feature has to be integrations. Now I've got Twitch in my browser, so it lets me know when my favorite streamers go live. I can chat on my Discord server 100% through Opera GX without switching windows. I've also got Messenger, so I can send screenshots to friends. Everything I need is right here. I was really happy to see Opera GX has a ton of customization options, and they're inspired by neon lights, so you can set the theme, wallpaper, and colors. It just breaks the darkness of the night and looks great. It's got a free VPN, adaptive background music, and even a way to clean out old browser files. Do yourself a favor and download Opera GX now using the link in the description and the pinned comment below. This is not an uncommon opinion, and I know that. Lots of people say Black Flag is their favorite game, but going in, I did not expect to feel this way afterwards. Fresh off of replaying the Ezio games, I assumed I'd be disappointed with all of the ways that Black Flag changes the formula. Less parkour, less stealth action, no modern-day protagonist, no doomsday plotline. This is where the series shifted. Some say it began after Ezio with Assassin's Creed 3, but I like to divide the series by modern-day plots. Where Assassin's Creed 1 through 3 is Desmond, AC4 is the research analyst, Unity and Syndicate is the Helix Initiate era, and then Origins and Odyssey is another thing entirely. Black Flag takes what it means to be an Assassin's Creed game and flips it on its head. It challenges those conventions, evolving a lot of what we expected from the series up to that point. Black Flag had a lot to prove too. It was a cross-gen title. It had to re-establish the modern day post-Desmond, and it had to mix things up in a time when people heavily criticized this series for not innovating. Ubisoft Montreal took many risks, but came out on the other side with what I feel is one of the most fun AC games still to this day.
This pair of legs is John, one of the wizards in IT. He's just fixing something for you.
Not fixing, calibrating.
Calibrating, right.
Before we dive into the simulation part of the story, let's talk about modern day. This was my least favorite part of Black Flag when it first came out. The idea that we were employed by Abstergo to search through Desmond's memories felt a little too cute to me. I thought, I'm the protagonist now, playing in first person? This is ridiculous. In 2014, I was still holding on to that Desmond bias really tightly. I had never known an Assassin's Creed game without him, so I couldn't stand the entire concept of the research analyst. Even after replaying, I'm not the biggest fan of the noob, but I do have to give Ubi credit for fully committing to the direction that they chose. The sages existing throughout history, the instruments of will, and the revelation that Juno is stuck in the gray is genuinely compelling to this day. Say what you will about the execution, but I think these concepts are still solid. And since there's no real present-day protagonist, the focus is fully on John's attempt to resurrect and unleash Juno into the world. Speaking directly to Juno is an incredible moment that stands out compared to the rest of the present-day sequences. Ubi really had something here in terms of continuing the overarching conflict, which makes it even more disappointing when you know how Juno's arc ends. Still, you can see the makings of a solid modern-day story arc to follow up Desmond's, and I appreciate that. Self-contained within this game, it does work. That being said, I don't think the connection between the Animus and the modern day is nearly as strong as it was before. In the Desmond games, we're playing through the important parts of his ancestors' memories to find pieces of Eden so that the assassins can locate them in present day. You don't know that immediately, it's slowly revealed and we fully understand by AC2, but it's clear we know what's going on most of the time. In Black Flag, the motivation for playing through Edward's memories is less impactful to me. You're told that you're a research analyst for Abstergo's entertainment products, when in reality you're being used by the Templars to search for precursor sites and pieces of Eden, specifically the observatory and the Crystal Skull. Early on, we are recruited by John Standish to work with the assassins, but we don't learn until the very end that John is the sage using us to resurrect Juno. We're basically this helpless pawn trapped between a rock and a hard place. But for some reason, Juno isn't strong enough to exist in the physical form, so John's backup plan is to poison us and use our body as a shell for Juno to inhabit. Abstergo shoots him dead, the research analyst survives, and the Templars seem to be none the wiser about the assassins or the sage's involvement. The issue for me is that it's harder to draw a through line between these plots. Our time in the Animus doesn't feel as relevant in the present day because we're not acting on the information we're gathering to further the assassin's cause. In the Desmond games, anytime we locate an Apple of Eden in his ancestors' memories, that moved the plot forward. Lucy and the gang actually traveled to the location where the apple was to grab it. We don't get that kind of follow through in Black Flag. There is a small bit of dialogue from Sean and Rebecca about making progress after the credits roll, but this just isn't enough for me. I would have liked to see a more active approach. Maybe we escape Abstergo after John's death, grab his blood, and then meet up with the assassins at the observatory in Jamaica to secure the precursor site. Also, the whole Juno isn't strong enough thing feels like a cop-out to string her story over the next several games. I understand why Ubisoft would want to slowly unravel this plot, and if they wanted to do it, now was their opportunity after Desmond's death. But I don't think it works because this was the 6th game in this series. It feels a little like putting the genie back in the bottle or putting the rabbit back into the hat, whatever expression you want to use at this point, and it ultimately felt frustrating not seeing meaningful plot movement in the present day. But this does have the unintended advantage of making me care a lot more about Edward's story. So much so that being yanked out of the Animus after every sequence is even more jarring. That's a sensation we feel in almost every AC game, but here it's magnified. I just wanted to get back to Edward and see where he was on his personal journey. I found myself caring about the ancestor storyline more than any other up to this point, and it's hard for me to complain because of how incredible the story is within the Animus.
You have remarkable skills.
Thanks, mate. It comes natural.
But you're churlish and arrogant, prancing around in a uniform that you have not earned.
Everything is permitted. Isn't that your motto?
I absolve you of your errors in Havana and elsewhere, but you are not welcome here.
Edward Kenway does not become an assassin until pretty much the very end of the game. While we get to wear the outfit, we're not exactly on good terms with the Brotherhood most of the time. This was shocking to me after not touching Black Flag in years. If you look at the previous games, one of the biggest criticisms for Assassin's Creed 3 is its lengthy prologue. And for some, it's the fact that Connor doesn't get his robes until sequence 6. Edward changes into his in the first 30 minutes, so that isn't a problem, but he steps into the role in a very non-assassin way. He steals the robes after killing an assassin turned Templar, hoping they would lead him to whatever fortune their former owner was seeking. But despite the hood and cloak, Edward doesn't earn the chance to become an assassin until the very, very end of the game. In fact, he's exiled by mentor Atabai early on for selling out the assassins and leading the Templars to their Caribbean headquarters. With all of this in mind, it doesn't bother me that I never get to play Edward as an assassin. To me, this is where Ubisoft proved that they could deliver a great Assassin's Creed game without relying on the assassin fantasy. Without the ceremony, the spectacle of what it means to be an assassin. Sure, you still feel that by using the hidden blades and wearing the hood, doing assassination missions, but so many other parts of Black Flag are distinctly not assassin. And yet, it works for many reasons. First and foremost, it's due to the protagonist and the decision to make Black Flag a character-driven narrative. Edward is just the best. He's not driven by revenge, at least not in the way that we might attribute to Ezio or Connor. Sure, he goes after those who wrong him, but Edward's primary struggle is with his undying thirst for fortune, or whatever that means in the golden age of piracy. In his nightmares, we see that he's haunted by the guilt of leaving his wife to chase his dreams. He spends the next decade making selfish decisions, seeking personal gain at the expense of everyone around him. He truly does not understand the value of life most of this game. Edward kills assassins in Havana, not thinking twice about his actions until he is met with the consequences, when he is exiled by Atabai. He chases the opportunity of the sage instead of listening to the advice of his close friend Adewale, which ultimately drives him away. It takes losing everything for Edward to finally hit rock bottom, going on a rum-fueled bender that sees him emerge with better intentions on the other side. He knows he's made mistakes, and he knows it won't be easy to right his wrongs. Black Flag manages to weave Edward's personal story of struggle into the overarching Assassins-Templars conflict, while also introducing the concept of the sages and giving us interesting stories grounded within the era. For me, this game is a narrative masterpiece. I love Edward. I love his character arc, and in a lot of ways, I relate to his relentless pursuit of glory. Black Flag is one of very few games that has ever made me relate on a personal level, and for that, I will never forget it. So much of the game's success is owed to the writing and the performances. So many parts of Black Flag work because of the narrative. Because I care about Edward, and because I believe that I'm him, sailing around the Caribbean in the 18th century. Because Black Flag has an absurdly fantastic supporting cast. Adewale might just be the best non-protagonist character in the entire series. He has his own character arc, his own motivations that he acts upon, his own agency which influences the narrative. After he leaves Edward to face his own fate with Roberts, Ade joins up with the assassins in pursuit of a nobler cause. And then later on, we get to see Ade make his mark on the world in Freedom Cry, when he teams up with the Maroons to take down the Haitian slave trade. I'd heard so many people say they wanted a full-length AC game with Ade as the protagonist, and I never understood why until now. The next standout is Mary Reed. She introduces Edward to the assassins and sees the good in him despite his thirst for glory, no matter how many mistakes he makes. Her death forces Edward to really search his soul, to abandon his foolish pursuits, to make amends with those he's hurt, and ultimately prove himself to the Brotherhood. Edward Thatch, Anne Bonny, Charles Vane, hell, even Stede Bonnet leaves a lasting impression, and he's only there for a couple sequences. What makes these characters shine is their agency. They all have their own pursuits, and they act on them. They're not treated as ancillary supporting pieces to prop up the protagonist. They're real human beings with complex emotions who make decisions with or without Edward. Those decisions have a perceived impact on the world and the narrative. That right there is the key, the difference maker between Black Flag's narrative and most other AC games. These characters wouldn't have come off that way without great performances.
To what end, eh? Will you sell it from under my nose? Or work with me and use it to bolster our gain?
Whatever improves my lot in life.
How ridiculous. A merry life and a short one, that's my motto. It's all the optimism I can muster.
Every single stinking piece of dialogue in this video game is a pleasure to listen to. It feels authentic, it feels appropriate. The accents are particularly striking to me. It took me a couple hours on my replay to understand what the hell these people were saying, because English sounded a little bit different back then, and that comes through. The colloquialisms, the metaphors, the cadence of speech, it's all baked into the script, and the voice actors just absolutely kill it. The standouts for me begin obviously with Matt Ryan as Edward Kenway. I didn't realize until after I looked it up for this video, but this performance is so compelling because Edward is played by a Welshman born in Swansea, the same exact place Edward is from. Compared to every other assassin, yes, even Ezio, Matt Ryan's performance just hits different. Same goes for Mary Reed, played by Olivia Morgan. At first, Mary plays the part of the mysterious character that introduces Edward to the assassins. But she doesn't just disappear or fade into obscurity, she remains a close friend of Edward, always acting as the angel on his shoulder, pushing him towards the light. She is essential to Edward's arc over the course of the game, and I can't imagine Black Flag without her or her performance. Another standout is Oliver Milburn, who plays the sage John Bartholomew Roberts. No matter where Edward's pursuits lead him, anytime Black Bart is on the screen, he commands it. Roberts lives and dies by his code, a merry life and a short one, and Milburn does an excellent job of bringing this historical figure to life with a psychotic spin as the sage. We have to talk about the memory corridor scenes in Black Flag. They are absolutely, positively brilliant. These monologues dive deep into the philosophies of each and every one of Edward's kills. These targets expose themselves in distinct ways, unique to their ideals and intentions, but always circling back to that classic assassin-Templar debate. These two factions seek the same goal, but go about it in different ways. This is another place where you get to see the narrative direction on full display. Edward's targets aren't Saturday morning cartoon villains, they're not caricatures. They're imperfect humans whose goals happen to collide with Edward's quest for glory. And for a long time, Edward doesn't buy into all this assassin Templar guff. He openly admits that he's only killing these people for coin, not to achieve the assassin's goals. Torres's final words stick in my mind the most.
You have no family anymore, no friends, no future. Your losses are far greater than ours.
That may be, but killing you rights a far greater wrong than ever I did.
You honestly believe that?
You would see all of mankind corralled into a neatly furnished prison, safe and sober, yet dulled beyond reason and sapped of all spirit. So with everything I've seen and learned in these last years, I do believe it.
You wear your convictions well. They suit you.
He recognizes the change in Edward, and with nothing left to lose, he praises him. This is not a string of dialogue you get from a villain in most video games. I don't think that Torres is a particularly memorable villain, but the way he speaks certainly is. There's just a level of depth here that gives me goosebumps after every assassination. What sells these narrative moments further is the excellent animation and mocap. While I won't pretend that these are groundbreaking technically, the facial animations are impressive given how many cutscenes are in this game. Similar to the Ezio trilogy, there's a handcrafted feel to every emotion expressed by these characters. They don't look just like real life, but they do hold up and are effective nonetheless. If you guys remember, I criticized Assassin's Creed 3's cinematics after my replay for a number of reasons. It felt like the side effect of transitioning to a modified engine. UB resolves all of those issues in Black Flag. The cutscenes, the animation, everything is much more effective here as a result.
Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me.
The most common piece of criticism for Black Flag's story is the pacing. and I get where people are coming from. At times it feels like Edward is wandering aimlessly, doing random piratey things and only brushing shoulders with the Templars versus Assassins conflict. Edward says it best.
I want a taste of the good life. An easy life.
My least favorite parts come after Edward assassinates Lawrence Prinz in Kingston, when we spend a couple of sequences with Blackbeard and Charles Vane. In the prototypical assassin storyline, Edward would have joined the Brotherhood when Mary brought him to Tulum. But that didn't happen because Edward had to learn from his actions. So the next few sequences are spent chasing the sage and wasting away living the pirate life. But these aren't just for character building. These stories are vital to Edward's arc. He chooses to pursue the sage for his own personal gain, and every action he takes is met with consequences. He chooses to trust Calico Jack, and the result is that he ends up stranded on an island. He chooses to trust Black Bart, and the result is that he lands in jail. He chooses the sage over the assassins multiple times, and in the end, he can't save Mary. It's only after he confronts his mistakes at the bottom of a bottle that he rises up to become the assassin Mary believed he could be.
For years I've been rushing around taking whatever I fancied, not giving a tinker's curse for those I hurt. And yet here I am, with riches and a reputation, feeling no wiser than when I left home. Yet when I turn around, look at the course I've run. There's not a man or woman that I love left standing beside me.
Edward's transformation is so satisfying that it makes those earlier sequences feel essential. They were part of his story, and he wouldn't be who he was without them. We wouldn't love this game as much as we do if we hadn't played through them. Some of the very best scenes in Black Flag come at the very end. As Irish Anne Bonny sings The Parting Glass, Edward says goodbye to his friends, those who betrayed him and those who stuck by him. He meets the daughter he never knew he had and sails to England. Years of guilt haunted Edward's dreams, and it feels like he only just now confronts them while talking to Jenny. I really have nothing of value to add here, other than this scene made me cry happy tears. When you have to stop for a moment to get your shit together after you load back into the world post-credits, you know a game has had a profound impact on you. To put a bow on the narrative discussion, Black Flag blew me away with its story.
Possibly I had a hand in selling a sensitive document to one of those Templar chaps you're so fond of.
Congratulations, your mission was a success.
How can I make amends?
You sober enough for target practice?
Anything for a lady.
During my replay of the series, I've been focusing on side missions to see how much care and attention is given to the optional content. Black Flag has its share of activities, and for the most part, they're pretty well done. Of course, you have millions of chests and animus fragments. These feel like doing the Ubisoft Collectathon routine because they don't offer much value. Sure, it can be fun to sail from island to island for these, but the motivation for this kind of gameplay feels dated. The assassination and naval contracts are pretty cookie cutter too. I didn't go out of my way to do them all because they're pretty service level. However, diving bells stand out to me because of how unique they are within the franchise and the variety I got from each and every one. These offer exploration spaces that leave you completely vulnerable to sharks, eels, urchins, and jellyfish. I didn't finish every diving bell because there's so many, but I appreciate how grounded these feel in the setting and the pirate fantasy. There's hunting, which feels like a holdover from AC3 and a means to an end for the crafting progression. The harpooning minigame really shines to me. Again, it's very grounded in the setting. It's unlike anything in the series to date, and no matter how many times I hauled in a whale, I was really excited to do it. The Mayan stele puzzles feel like a lighter version of the truth, but I had a fun time searching for these across each island. What stuck out most to me were the Templar hunts. If you caught me streaming Black Flag, this is the one thing I couldn't shut up about. A couple months ago, I played the homestead missions in AC3 for the first time, and I came away really impressed. But I have to say, Black Flag's Templar hunts take the cake for me. They're short and sweet, but like the rest of the game, these characters are memorable. The best part is that they connect back to the main narrative. After selling a map to the Templars at the very beginning of the game, Edward tracks down the assassins whose names were listed as targets to warn them. In the process, he makes amends with the assassins and locates the keys to unlock the Templar armor. Along the way, we get to do what feels like some classic Assassin's Creed missions. There's a bit of investigation, some trailing missions, bureau defense. They're all so much fun. To me, these Templar hunts fit in with the Da Vinci missions and the Homestead missions as some of the very best AC side activities in the entire series.
You're a natural sailor, Duncan.
I did a decent trick at the helm some time ago. 2 years before the mast as a privateer.
Dash my buttons. Your life seems a grand one, if I may say. So full of adventure. How marvelous.
Black Flag has one of the best open worlds in a series that is known for really good open worlds. It takes place during the golden age of piracy, when the British, Spanish, French, and Portuguese were all active in the Caribbean. The way this game represents nearly every side of this era, including the slaves and the native populations, does so much to immerse you in this culturally diverse historical environment. I can't begin to describe what it does for this world to hear English voices in British-occupied Nassau and then being able to sail to Principe to hear Portuguese accents. Again, it just gives an air of authenticity that I appreciate the hell out of. In 2014, Black Flag's ocean and water effects were really impressive. And even now, in 2020, they still impress me. There's something so special about cruising the open seas with your crew, adjusting the sails to maneuver the Caribbean, navigating rogue waves, dodging waterspouts. All these details, the many small things contribute to the sum to make sailing such a pleasant experience. By the end, I realized not only is sailing a blast in Black Flag, it's very Assassin's Creed. Navigation has always been at the heart of AC for me. Parkour is platforming in a 3D open world. You make decisions on how to go from point A to point B, and it's satisfying to learn how to move efficiently, even if you end up jumping off buildings to your death every now and then. We still have parkour in Black Flag, but it's far less of a focus due to the setting and the environment. Instead, sailing fills that void. It provides engaging navigation in a different form. You get to soak in a beautiful world while listening to the sounds of the ocean. You can steer your ship to any island in the game, drop anchor, hop out, and swim to the shore to explore. Now, there are loading screens for big cities, but it still feels magical in that open world sort of way. Just how far you can travel without hitting a loading screen seals the deal further. I won't pretend that sailing is the same as platforming, but it adds something in place of parkour that at times feels arguably better. It's strange because you'd think opening fire on ships, boarding and sinking them would clash with the prototypical assassin fantasy. This made me realize how big machines and vehicles have always played a part in this series, outside of the very first game. I tend to think that the assassin fantasy means following the creed to a T. Don't kill civilians, hide in plain sight, and never compromise the Brotherhood. In reality, Ezio uses Leonardo's machines to do some crazy shit in the Italian Renaissance. Connor helmed the Aquila in the Battle of Chesapeake Bay. There are countless other examples, but the point is that assassins use the tools of their time to further their goals. That is exactly what Edward, Adewale, and others do in the West Indies, but they're doing it more often. Where those activities represented small side missions in previous games, sailing is central to this experience. And it works. Battling ships of countries corrupted by Templars makes all the sense in the world, as does capturing their forts and all of the other ship activities in the game. Before I touch on the few flaws that I think this game has, I need to mention the soundtrack. It's something that I often overlook when I talk about games. The sea shanties are amazing, we all know that, but the score and theme for Black Flag do so much for this game too, especially the Animus loading screens. That underwater sort of bubbling sound effect every time you pause the game or hit a loading screen, it does so much for the atmosphere. Never once did I think how important menu music was before this game made me realize it. And the music in between action sequences and playing behind cutscenes, it just makes everything work. I wish I had the musical expertise to tell you exactly why this is so effective, but for now I'll just say that it is. I love it.
precious tool, you see.
Sorcery, that's what it is.
Not so! Every mechanism that gives this device its light is a true and physical thing. Ancient, yes, but nothing supernatural or strange.
We'll be masters of the ocean with that.
Up to this point, I've praised pretty much everything about this game. Black Flag is my favorite, but it's not perfect. Combat, stealth, and parkour are not great in this game, but they feel like results of UB trying to make do with Anvil Next. Every game using this version of the engine feels slightly janky in places, like fitting a square peg into a round hole. Where AC3's cutscenes aren't the best, Assassin's Creed 4's combat feels like it takes a few steps back. Nearly all combat audio is out of sync. Gunshots, sword slices, death noises, they all seem to activate like a second after you see them on screen. To this day, you can boot it up right now and experience this. It's bizarre. This is something that never got patched, so I assume it's an issue with the engine itself. I got used to it, but it still detracts from my overall experience. What also bugs me is the combat animations. Sometimes Edward puts on a show and slices his victims about 80 million times before killing them. In AC3, Connor gets carried away too, but it's more clear when you could chain into the next attacker. I don't get that with Black Flag. There's just no flow, and it could be because I just didn't get the timing right, but it didn't work for me. More often than not, I resorted to pulling out my 4 pistols and shooting everyone on the spot. Don't get me wrong, that is still fun, but it's just not as engaging to me. Stealth is also an issue, mostly because of the environment. While UB added stalking zones, which improved stealth a lot from AC3, buildings and cover are still too spread out. This didn't feel as much of a problem in the older games because you could blend with crowds. There was a bunch of environmental stuff and buildings you could use to break line of sight. But in this game, the fact that I can't crouch down in place and have to rely on those spread out blend objects makes doing anything stealthily pretty frustrating. More than any other Assassin's Creed game, I felt more comfortable just mowing through enemies. This is still in the counter kill era of Assassin's Creed combat. And it kind of was okay with me because Edward's a pirate. He's got these guns, it just makes sense. Parkour isn't great either. In fact, it might be at an all-time worst here. I wouldn't say it's due to there not being enough opportunities to climb, because there are plenty of cities and jungle environments that offer interesting parkour. But like Assassin's Creed 3, the setting doesn't facilitate a ton of climbing. You're spending so much time out on the ocean that parkour becomes a thing that you occasionally do. It's not central to the gameplay loop. For that reason, I can understand why UB didn't focus on it. Still, I found myself leaping off of buildings and ship masts to my death at least a dozen times over 30+ hours. And you all know how that feels. It would have been nice to have better parkour for the times that I was doing it.
You're a good man, Edward. And if you learn to keep settled in one place for more than a week, you'll make a fine father too.
Despite its issues, Black Flag is a gem in this series. Most of us can agree on that. This game proved that Ubisoft could do something different with Assassin's Creed and succeed. They didn't need a revenge plot. They succeeded by telling the personal journey of someone who didn't deserve to be an assassin until they earned it. They didn't need heavy parkour and stealth action. They took sailing and created a satisfying gameplay loop to compensate. They didn't need to rely on the assassin fantasy. They bucked that trend and leaned into the setting. UB built a complete experience around the pirate fantasy and came away with one of the most fun ACs to date. Black Flag is a masterful video game, and despite its issues, there's not much I would change about it. After my replay, I started to think about Black Flag's legacy. It's one of the most beloved AC games, but I have no doubt this game is one of many reasons Ubisoft felt comfortable rebooting the series after Unity and Syndicate. Why not take the idea of Black Flag, of evolving on the formula, and push it a couple steps further? We've now seen the results of what that looks like with Origins and Odyssey, and it's produced some of the most controversial games of the series. While some fans have welcomed that change, others have not. And now that Valhalla's out, it's even clearer to me that one of the reasons Black Flag still feels like that old Assassin's Creed is because it was a product of its time. While it's not the perfect example of the assassin fantasy, you can pick up Black Flag today and feel like you're playing one of the older games. It still sticks to the classic formula in terms of counter-kill combat and parkour, however sticky or unclean it might be. You get to captain a ship, you get to shoot cannonballs, you get to do piratey stuff, but you also get to wield dual hidden blades and blend into crowds. You get to wear the hood in and out of combat. You get to go on assassination missions. Black Flag manages to do both without sacrificing too much on either side. It's kind of the perfect balance, and for that reason, above all else, it still stands as my very favorite game in the entire franchise. This project has been in the works for such a long time, so I wanted to thank you guys if you made it this far so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to my channel. I'm definitely going to revisit lots of other games in this franchise and talk about new ones in this sort of format. So if you're interested, remember to hit the bell to receive live notifications so you don't miss those videos. You can also follow me on social media. I'm at jayveeonYT and jayvee.yt on Instagram. I post little videos about the games that I'm playing and screenshots and really keep you guys up to date on content, so that's a great place to follow me. And we have our own community server over on Discord. It's discord.gg/jayveeonYT. Lots of great people there, always talking about games, new and old. So if you're interested, links for everything are in the description below. Big thanks to my YouTube members, my Ultra fans, Dave, Grass, Deadwalker, Cullen, and Bill. My super fans, Kamal, Casey, Tipsy Sergey, Tarl K, Ryan, Tia, and Rabbi. Fans, John, Matthew, Spyro, JVO, Level 42, Joe, Lil Man, and Blood Sky. And supporters, Nos, Sung, Taryn, Adam, Blaze, Mr. Hollow, Quickness, Firkin, Abhishek, John, Jennifer, Jay, and Sam for supporting the channel. If you want to support me further, click the join button below this video. In exchange for your support, you'll unlock custom badges, emotes, stuff to use during live streams, and monthly play sessions with the community. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.